And now, broadcasting live from our near-Earth hub studio, we bring you this NBN Special Report.
All right. Hello, everybody. We're here for another fantastic day of spoiler season. You'll note we have a super full cast. We've got Pouchsurfer, Funkeyman, Orbital Tangent, and Neuropancer. However, I have to disappoint you just a little bit that Orbital Tangent and Neuropancer aren't here just yet, but they told me they will be here, so we'll see if they zag on me. In the meantime, I have two fantastic guests, Pouchsurfer and Funkeyman, and I will have Pouchsurfer do a very quick introduction to himself right now.
Hello everyone. I'm Pouchsurfer, or Seba, he, him. And I am together with Mr. Buggles, the translation manager for NSG, and also a TO in Philly.
And you're running or helping to run US East Coast Nationals in, I believe, just a couple of days, right?
That's correct. Yes. Together with the lovely Dan B and Sanjay, we are running East Coast Nationals, which we hope to have a ton of people come at, and we're very excited about it. So for anyone that is listening to the casts, you should come. It's a lot of fun.
Fantastic. And Funkeyman, also known as Dan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hey everyone, I'm Dan, also known as Funky Man, he, him pronouns. I am just a Boston area local player, newly turned avid netrunner monster. So happy to be here.
Yeah, and I guess actually I'll ask the question I usually ask at the start of the show, which is when did you start playing Netrunner?
Yeah, I started playing Netrunner about a year ago. I think I got System Gateway in August of last year, thanks to the Shut Up and Sit Down video recommendations. And then I just slowly built up. I started attending some of the locals in like February of this year. So I've dived head first.
Very cool. And Seba, how about you?
I started playing around, I think, summer of 2021, so I'm also a relatively recent player. And I think the big push to really get me into thinking about the runner more competitively, or thinking about it more, was PAX Unplugged, which, once again, Dan B, the hype man extraordinaire of the East Coast, was running.
Yeah, I should say Dan B has been doing so much work for the Netrunner community. If he shows up to an event you're at, make sure he doesn't pay for his food or drinks. He does a ton, and has been a great influence on the community. I guess the other, and this is the last softball question, and then we'll start talking about the scoops. But I'm kind of curious, how have you two been feeling about this spoiler season so far?
I've been pretty excited about it. Um, I love getting to see all the different kinds of Netrunner content creators and all of the folks at NSG who get to weigh in. I love hearing like the process of making a set. So not only am I like excited about all the new cards, the new mechanics, and the theory crafting, I like hearing from the folks who are behind this game that I really enjoy. So that's been super cool.
That's
Yeah, and
great.
it's the same for me. It's been incredibly exciting. I think this set, as well as Borealis, have been incredible from a narrative standpoint. I think it was really, yeah, it's been awesome as always to follow the scoop season, but to sort of see it all come together, yeah, it's been fantastic.
Okay, I said it was the last softball question, but I actually have one more to follow up on that. What's your favorite card that's been spoiled so far?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm actually really excited about Behold. I love the art. I love the exclamation mark. I know it's going to ruin me in a game or two, but I'm excited to have like an additional surprise that I don't think will hurt too much and will hit just right. I think it's going to have some fun games.
And I have to say, I'll take the opportunity to say it now before Orbital and Neuropancer get on the call, but I am a Shaper apologist, and so I'm extremely excited about the new Trojan-based runner ID Arisana. I think it's going to be a ton of fun to come up with skateboard, or I guess rollerblade tricks.
Yeah, I think that's been a really common one. So I think I hope that Arasana turns out to be worth playing. because I think you, me, and a lot of the other guests are pretty excited. And yeah, apologies about the giant behold for a second there. I forgot my normal protocol of sizing things first. But I think that's enough kind of vamping at the beginning. I do. I want to give a shout out, and this is the thing I don't always do well enough. But please, please, please check out the original creators that put this stuff up. They put in a ton of work, and really, their only the only thing they get out of this is people saying, "I really like this stuff. You did a good job." So people should check out Ba Ram Wu, who I actually thought did a fantastic stream on pretty short notice to get some spoilers. And we're going to be talking about those 3 cards up next. So let's hit the first one. This is Strike Fund. This is a 1 cost event. It says gain 4 credits. When this event is trashed from your grip or stack, you may gain 2 credits. This is a single influence. And yeah, that's the whole card. 2 lines of text and a fairly simple set of abilities. I guess I'm kind of curious, Seba, what's your initial thoughts on this card?
I think it's a really clever design. I think Baron Wu was doing an amazing job at sort of like describing how it fits within the Anarch color pie in terms of benefiting from trashing cards. It works really well with Banhar. I can't wait to have 3 Strike Fund and a moshing in hand. I think the sort of like first reaction that I had to this card is a similar reaction that I've heard a lot about this set. I've heard about the threat mechanic, which is this. Why didn't anybody think of this before? I think it's such a clever mechanic that, yeah, I'm really hyped about this card, even though it's so simple.
Yeah, and even though it's simple, I think like it can help in a couple of different situations. It's always nice to have like a small econ card that can get you off your feet if your econ's ground into the ground. So I'm never mad about that. But the way it plays with all the other Anarch cards, I think it's going to be really cool. But it does make me wonder, like when we get rotation with the bin breakers, but we still have all this trashing, like mechanics and synergy. Like, what does that look like? How is it going to look if Anarchs have to suddenly play breakers that they might lose? I think that's going to be fun, and I'm glad we're still leaning in this direction or supporting some of the other cards that go in this direction.
Yeah, I think that's
also something. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I was going to say something that I think it's often overlooked, but I'm particularly excited about this card is the 1 influence cost. I was trying to think how to put together just today a Mercury deck that could use Benhar, and I think it's hard to get some extra value out of losing cards from hand. I thought, or with Mercury, it's great to play Benhar. You don't have to break any subroutines. You just face check, ice, and take net damage. But it's Benhar is an expensive influence-wise card, and fitting in all 3 copies of Steelskin's Karin was sort of making influence really tight. So I really like how splashable this Strike Fund is. I think especially Benhar enjoyers in other factions are going to really appreciate this.
Yeah, so Banhar's 3 influence. So if you include 2 copies very optimistically, that's 6, and then another 6 on Steelskin, and then 3 on Strike Fund, and you can have the full Anarch self-trashing card pool, and all it cost was all your influence.
You have to really commit to the bit, but
yeah.
Who needs breakers anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think Seabass was asking if this is the first econ card in the set we've seen. I think this might be the first runner card that says gain credits on it that we've seen so far. Um, so that's definitely. I think that's one of the interesting things about NSG sets is they tend to be pretty light on just kind of basic econ cards. Oops, that's the wrong thing. Uh, so that definitely makes us look at Strike Fund, I think, a little more maybe closely and intensely than otherwise. I would, an easy mark with a trash synergy. But at the same time, I think easy mark with a trash synergy and I guess a ghost tongue synergy is also a big, significant. Like I could almost see uh, Essa just playing Strike Fund instead of Sure Gambles because it has a similar-ish payout. Um, so I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't make my shout before the set came out, but I wanted to say that I think like Essa is still gonna feel really good. That was my hunch is that I think they're gonna get a lot of cards and a lot of extra synergy, and I think this is one of many.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because like the important thing context for Strike Fund, of course, is that the bin breakers are going, and so a lot of the power is kind of slipping out of the or there's a point of power that's leaving the faction, and so it'll be interesting to see if Strike Fund can help make up for some of that. But do we want to move on to the next card numerically in the set, which is I think the last card that Baramu previewed, but I think is definitely worth talking about. This is Solidarity Badge. This is a unique one-cost hardware subtyped chip. It says the first time each turn you trash a corp card, place one power counter on this hardware. When your turn begins, you may remove one hosted power counter to draw one card or remove one tag. This is one influence. Either of you have some initial thoughts on this?
I can see how Barang Wu was so hyped about this card. I think it's very splashable, really cheap. I think relatively flexible. Um, it feeds into something that runners already want to do or end up doing, which is trashing corp cards. And I think the sort of maybe the most boring, but I think what ultimately is going to be the most used case, at least from what we've seen so far in the Anarch new cards in the set, is to draw cards, which I mean sounds great. You basically have a Noshiko ability without losing a credit stapled to the board, which seems pretty good.
It definitely seems good. I can't help but think about all of the different like tag interactions that are being added with this new set. I mean, if you think about Oppo research, the clause for firing it is after, stealing or trashing. So if you have like a solidarity badge, like, and you're going to trash something, you're like kind of already setting yourself up to like be protected from, um, getting Oppo researched in return, or at least prepping for it. So I think that's going to be like an interesting interaction.
Yeah, I think that's a really good shout out. Also, I want to keep talking about Solidarity Badge, but also we are joined, I think, by Neuropanzer. Oh, maybe I was a bit preemptive.
That is
Oh,
correct. You are.
fantastic. It's great to hear your voice, man. Um, thanks for
Been a
coming
bit.
on.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some banger cards to talk about today, don't we?
Yeah, and I know you've had a busy day, so may have missed these literally less than an hour old scoops from Ba Ran Wu. Uh,
I have missed those. Give me a moment to look through them.
yeah. So I think I've seen some people in the chat talking about comparing Solidarity Badge to Aaron Marone, which is maybe I think there's a slight power level difference between these two, but I do think that my next point of comparison is probably something like Chopbot, or to use his full name, Chopbot 3000, which was when your turn begins, you may trash another of your installed cards. If you do, draw a card or remove a tag. I think it's kind of interesting, like how few words have to change between Solidarity Badge and Chopbot, and yet I think we look at this card pretty differently. Trashing your own stuff versus trashing the corpse stuff is a pretty big change in how in what the card asks of you and asks of your deck building. So.
I think the difference between Job Bot and Solidarity Badge is, I think it's significant enough that Apex is shedding a single tier of sadness instead of just ripping its spaghetti hair out of its head by rotating when this card comes into the card pool. If I can say one thing about this card, I'm really interested to see how the removal of the tag is going to become more relevant into Anarchs in the future, because it is, as Baramu was pointing out, a really big cost to have to keep a tag during the entire corp's turn. I have to disagree with them though, in that I think it's pretty good against tags that are taken during the corp's turn. I think about sort of taking a tag and then suffering the consequences through retribution, or self-growth program, or any of the tag banishment cards. It's kind of nice to not have to also take a second hit, which is you have to spend a click and a credit and 2 credits to remove the tag. I'm thinking about, for example, the corpse scoring from the board a Tomorrow's Headline, and you don't even have to worry about it. You just use a power counter and shake the tag.
Yeah, I think that...
How bad does it feel to give 2 terminal tags when this is charged up?
I mean, it does feel like you've lost all of your tempo, right? It's like, oh yeah, I guess you only spent 2 credits on it, but at the same time, the runner's only going to spend 1 click and 2 credits, so you've kind of traded a card for nothing, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Like that's a really interesting piece of loose support. I think the charging things up off of trashing the corpse stuff, you like trashing the corpse stuff anyway, but I think getting additional support for, like, okay, we're just gonna make that action which you want to do in that AD ability a little bit more powerful every single time. I like that. I like seeing support for that playstyle in that AD.
Okay, I'm gonna go out on my jank limb for a second. So let's say we install Solidarity Badge, and we are playing Lou. I think there's really good arguments to play Solidarity Badge and Freedom, and we can talk about that in a bit.
Oh,
yeah. But I'm playing Lou, and I'm playing Solidarity Badge. So if I trash a card, I am drawing 1 card this turn, and 1 card next turn. Now there happens to be, I would say, a much maligned card that says, trash 2 cards to trash a corp card. I am, of course, talking about the 4-cost console from Gateway, Carnivore. I think it's time.
Oh,
Carnivore is real. It is here. It is back with a vengeance. I will not be backed down. No one will talk me down from this ledge. We're entering Carnivore
has
meta.
entered the chat.
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh no, we're good. I just wanted to note that Carnivore had entered the chat.
Yeah. No, hey,
I mean,
we've got
more cards to trash.
Exactly, right? We've got Strike Fund now. So now I can be trashing cards and making credits while doing so. And using Steel Skin from the last set, I could be trashing cards and drawing cards. What could possibly be bad about this combination? It's just Carnivore synergies top to bottom.
I think this entire Anarch faction in this set seems to be a love letter to Carnivore. It's incredible that it only took 2 new spoiled cards to make Carnivore playable, maybe?
Playable question mark?
Yeah.
Playable question. Hey, all it's going to take is some corps that play powerful operations, like a 7 cost, give you 4 tags that you can't do anything to interact with otherwise. But yeah, no. I mean, in all seriousness, I will probably try some Carnivore decks because it just seems too fun not to. I would be a little bit surprised if Carnivore took over the meta. I think it's much more likely, though, that something like Freedom, let's see if I can go and grab him, is going to really like Solidarity Badge. Like, one of the big things in Modern Anarch is like, oh, just play Hoshiko because you can't replace a draw a turn. And Freedom Solidarity Badge, yeah, it's a 2-card combo, but it might be more disruptive than Hoshiko, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, and I missed the early discussion on this because I wasn't in the stream at that point yet, but just it's good enough in many cases just to get the draw. If you remove the tag, that's gravy. But like, I would run this just to get the draw if I had reliable ways to trigger it.
Yeah, I think
I agree. Yeah.
one credit to Drick Draw is a pretty good exchange. It does require that you're interacting with the court pretty consistently, but conveniently this does like pay off some of that downside of interacting, which has historically been, tag punishment. So it's kind of cool.
Yep.
I do also want to give a quick shout out to this piece of art. I think it's a it's a very fun cyberspace meet space blend that is often really hard to pull off, and I think done really well here. Uh, so
Yeah,
shout out to
I'm
Anna
looking closer at it
Kutova.
now that you actually call it out. I agree. I mean, the art in this set so far, I have not seen a single miss. It's all been so good.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the final Ba Ram Wu card. So we have Lao- Lego Paronia Shelter. This is a 2-cost resource connection location. It says the first time each turn the corp installs a card in the root of a server, you may trash the top card of your stack to draw 1 card. It's 2 influence. I also, before we go into takes on this card, Baran Wu did all 3 of these cards, I believe, as like a puzzle solve thing. Obviously, knowing the full text will ruin it, but I would really recommend going back. I think the puzzles were quite clever. They were obtuse enough that no one got them before the stream, but like still good puzzles in that you could kind of piece them together and get to the right answer if you thought about things in the right way, which I thought was fun. But that's let's also talk about the card. Anyone have some initial thoughts on this new shelter?
I like
My
the
initial
art.
thought is actually something on the theme. Connection location is a really cool combination, and I think a very cool way of fleshing out the connections matter theme that we've seen in this set a little bit.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah, that's
only
definitely the theme here is like connection and support, like in the face of so much else going on. Like I feel like Zoe talked a lot about that, and you can see it coming through in a lot of different ways. I think this is one of them about like community.
Yeah, I think it is a really interesting point that's like, yeah, this is not just a location, this is a group of people working together. And that is it's a fun way to tie those two things together. Because there's most locations really are the people there, not the physical thing itself. But it definitely comes through in this art.
Also, I like how. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
No.
I also really like how Anarchs seem to be getting a much nicer or happier vibe in this set than previously. I feel like, especially with Borealis and Perillion, the tone of a lot of the cards was pretty heavy. I'm a huge fan of it, and I think it's some amazing art in that set as well. But it's nice to see a change of pace.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is
my
nice that
favorite feel good, Netrunner card, Finality.
yeah, I was just about to say at least the whole theme is not blood and tragedy in the snow. Like that was Anarch's whole theme. So yeah,
And yeah, as you pointed out, it was good. It was executed well, but yeah, it is nice to have a different feel to kind of contrast after that.
yeah, it is important, if you're looking at your art trying to inform your politics, to remember that anarchism is not just people being angry at each other for not being anarchist enough, but also working together to make a better future for tomorrow, which is, this card is definitely personifying. So, but we should probably talk a little bit about the card. To me, this is an interesting one to evaluate. I'm kind of curious where the 3 of you are standing.
So much of this seems to matter. The My opinion on this card depends entirely on how horizontal corps are, I think. Or I guess how jammy they are as well. Just if you don't get to trigger this often enough, I don't think it's worth a deck slot. But if you're against CTM, I think this is really good. And like, yes, I know CTM rotated, but you know what I mean. If you're
Yeah.
against CTM or CTM like, just I mean, as a long-term degenerate max player, trashing cards is very good, drawing cards is very good. If you get to do this reliably, it seems very good to me. If you don't get to do it reliably, it seems expensive.
Yeah, so I guess maybe one question I have for you, as probably the only one other than me on this call, I think, who's played a lot of Max. What would be, how many triggers do you think you're looking to get out of this to make it feel like you've gotten your card slot and money's worth?
Given that it's 2 cost and unique, I would probably want to get upwards of 6 triggers for me to really feel that it was worth the effort. Anything less than that, and I think it's just the fact that, like, if you're installing this late for 2 credits and you get like 2 triggers out of it, I don't think it's done its job. Um, like there are other better late game cards you can have. And the trick, obviously, a trick here is you really don't want to run 3 of these because you can't control the trash. It's harder to make sure that this thing, like, you don't see multiples of it. Um, so yeah, I think my answer is upper single digits. If you get double-digit triggers out of this, you're ecstatic, but I don't think that that's realistic in most games.
I think it's also if you get double digits trigger, that means you're losing double digit cards from the top of your stack, which to me seems like a scary thing. You have a lot more control over the cards you're losing through net damage because you see your hand and see what you're likely to be losing. The top of the deck seems a lot more scary. I'm unsure about this card. I think what's interesting about it is that it pushes you to. I think it pushes deck building to be a little different. I think Anarch as a faction right now has enough cards that you can just play 3 of everything, and you're not upset about any of the cards that you're losing because the card that you're going to be drawing is probably just as good or better. But I think with the bin breakers gone, that sort of takes away potentially 9 cards that you're happy to see trashed. You have to think about including things like buffer drive or 1 or more copies of labor rights, maybe Katorka breakout to sort of pick out the cards that were good, that were trashed from the top of the deck. So it seems twice situational in a way, as Pants was saying. You're happy to play this card if you're playing against asset spam or asset heavy corpse. And on the other hand, I think you sort of have to push your deck building or your deck construction in a bit of a different direction to be able to make the most out of this card.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think we're going to see a shift in how we value some of the recursion cards. And, maybe if the Hoshikos stay big, like, you don't worry too much about this. But even playing labor rights sometimes, like, you just are rolling the dice about how hard you're going to get hit by those trashes and how much it can accelerate you. I think one stopgap for this card is you at least get to choose. You're not forced to keep trashing your cards. So you can kind of try and make your calls moment by moment. But yeah, like there could be a game where you feel great about how much draw you're getting and then hit the end and realize like what you're losing out on. So I'm really curious to see it in play.
I personally hope that people just embrace the spirit of it and just always trash. Like, the thing that I learned from playing Max for so long is your cards belong in the trash. You should just put them there.
Yeah, I think this
Agreed.
was. Oh, hey, that's a wild orbital tangent. Thanks for swinging by.
I have returned.
For those of you who
God.
don't know, Orbital Tangent has been one of the longest standing members of NSG, and I'm one of the 2 hosts of the Slums cast, along with Neuropa, who have both joined me to talk about their half of the scoops later in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super excited to have them both on, and welcome, Orbital.
Glad to be here. I'm surprised Pants has not yelled at anybody yet about buffer drive being terrible.
I was just gonna let that one slide under the radar.
Yeah, we're in positive happy mode. We let people discover when they make their own mistakes, right?
Pants, you've changed.
No, I mean, we'll roast the card again at some point on the Slums cast, but like it's I appreciate when people kind of learn that a card is bad themselves. Like we had that entire we had the story of the listener learning that Gauntlet was terrible themselves, and like you know just the realization that they came to. I think that was a magical journey for them, and I wouldn't want to interrupt that for other people with buffer drive.
Jeff, how are you just ready with the gauntlet? Were you expecting us to shit on that card?
No, I'm just that good. No, this is what you get when you program as a hobby. You figure out ways to do fun stuff. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. Like I'm like looking at the text of this card. I'm like pretty down, and then people mention like asset spam, and I'm like, oh, I guess the text of this card isn't that different from Astrolabe. Maybe that's good, because Astrolabe was one of the best cards ever printed. Now, admittedly, Astrolabe did some other stuff and had a whenever on it, which is two big
Astrolabe
upgrades.
is so good. The fact that Astrolabe cost 1, how did they let Astrolabe cost 1?
I think they were tired of the fact that they had printed 0 playable Shaper consoles in 3 years or something like that.
That's valid.
But who knows? I mean, I think it was really like, hey, we need to give our good. I know we'll get back to the real spoilers in a moment, but we need to give our boy Nasir a little bit of love. And Nasir's never going to have 4 credits, so let's give him a 1-cost console.
To be fair, if that's the thought process, they were right, but
Nasir did in fact never have 4 credits, so they were correct there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I should not go too long about cards that are not super meta relevant anymore. But I do think it is worth like I'm not look where Lego Peronius Shelter, and I'm hoping that I'm saying that approximately correctly, lands. Like I doubt it's going to be max, because usually when you take an ID ability and move it to a different card, it becomes significantly worse. And I'm not even sure if going from Trash 2 to Trash 1 is an upgrade, because, as Pants said, cards belong in the trash. And we do have a lot of recursion accessible. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see where this lands.
Yeah, like all memes aside, this does genuinely take longer to get you to the end of the stack when things like Katorga Breakout and obviously labor rights are like at their absolute most powerful. So it does take you longer to get to the end game where those cards are maximized and are giving you absolute gas the whole time.
To throw the sickos a bone, do you want this in max in Eternal?
Oh my god.
I mean,
the discard's your second hand. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean that's a good point, because also every Corp deck in Eternal is an asset spam deck. So if you find this turn 1, you will just draw your whole deck in 4 turns. And considering that
not if you play 120 cards.
That's true. I would say the argument against 120 card max, though while very good in standard, is that Eternal Max gets to play Account Siphon. And you do want to find that card sometimes. But all right, I think we've talked about these cards enough, and I am very excited to move on to the second half of our spoilers today, which are the scoops from Slums Cast. So for our very first one, we have
new background.
Wage Workers. This is a 2-cost unique card. It's an asset, Biroid, Clone, Industrial, and its rules text is, wow, imagine an office where employees are not just allowed to have fun, it's encouraged. And this is 4 trash and 2 influence.
Really important to encourage your employees, I think. Give them those pizza parties. Make sure that they understand that that's all they're really going to get, and never a wage increase.
And I mean, obviously, encouraged is a much stronger effect than just allowed, which is why this is unique.
And that's also why they gave it like a 4 trash cost too. I mean, like I would have put it, a little bit lower just for how good this card is going to be.
Yeah, I
It
mean
is
you
really
have
good
to.
for the corp though,
Oh, please go
because
ahead.
encouragement doesn't cost the corp anything. So, really, really great text for the corp here.
Yeah, I mean this is a straight up banger from NSG. I mean, I expect this to go in a lot of purple decks. I expect this to go in some yellow decks. I wouldn't be shocked to see Wayland, and like Jinteki's really gonna stretch for encouraging their employees that are a much bigger fan of some of the other mechanics introduced in this cycle. But I wouldn't be surprised to see one or two encouragement Jinteki decks tried out.
Hmm.
Yeah, and like the two influence number is important. Like we want encouraged employees across the board, but like that is kind of a core HB mechanic.
Yeah, I mean
You should have to pay for it.
HB is all about efficiency, and nothing's more efficient for a corporation than free encouragement or the cost of like a pizza or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I do think though that it's interesting to think about how this card fits in with the next card in the set. This is Jaguarundi, a 4-cost Century AP that has 3 strength, and its text is simply pretty much like 80% of the cats in that movie are fake, and this is 2 influence.
Obviously, like this is very meta dependent. If you're in a dog deck meta, this does almost nothing, but it completely blows the cat deck out of the water.
Oh, that's a good. I hadn't
Hmm.
thought about this as a cat tech, though it's really clearly spelled out on the card, so I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So definitely, you could use this as in the cat deck mirror matchup. Absolutely, this will make all of their cats fake, and therefore they're no longer part of Team Cat.
denying the Dag value alone, I think, makes this card worth
Mhm.
playing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Also, some great number. I don't think we've ever seen 80 in any other Netrunner card. I think this sort of tops Big
Mhm.
Deal as the card with
Ooh.
the biggest value.
Yep.
You're
I will
so
say
right.
one thing though. I will say one thing with this card being so powerful against cats. I do think that we do have to consider an errata to all of the Cat Shen art cards, who has done this lovely art in this card, to retroactively make all of those cards part of Team Cat.
Mm.
I don't know if
Yeah,
Deep
yeah,
Dive
deep dive
really needs
SVC.
that nerf though. Like it's already marginal, and then it just gets hit by being a fake card. I just like that's going to be such a blowout if you like put this on archives. The shaper goes run HQ, run R&D, run archives. Oh no, my deep dives are fake for the rest of this turn. I don't know. It's going to be a tough one.
Admittedly, like border control does the same thing.
It's true. It's
Though
true.
I guess I'm making your point. Like border control is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also Dan coming in clutch, shouting. This is actually the anti-botulus tech. Oh, that I can't spell. The
Oh, that's so
anti-botulus
smart.
tech we've all been waiting for. Just turn it right
Thank
off.
goodness.
Yeah, this is basically a magnet that works 4 out of 5 times. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I guess that's
Mhm.
something we haven't
Indeed.
talked about. This is bringing a little bit of that like Pokemon feel, where like it's very common you have to flip a coin to see if you get to do this usually super toxic thing, like making your opponent discard their entire hand. I don't know how. I guess they're just expecting us to bring D20s there and know how to do the 80% math on a D20 really quickly. So maybe a little bit less wild about that part of the mechanic.
I mean, I'm sure OP will probably make some sort of counter or something. Like we have the cards for the mark, right? Like I'm sure there's something in the works.
I feel like the update is just going to be, it's basically a better diviner. Suck it up.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, I guess sometimes you just have to power creep cards that don't quite make the bill. But I think in terms of other interesting cards, we'll maybe move on to the next one. This is MIC, or as I'm just going to call it, Mick. Our good friend Mick here, six to res, 4 strength, ice, code gate, and his text is simply basically a sniper rifle that can switch gears and turn into a baseball bat if the situation demands it. An army man's ultimate tool.
This is such a cool, like, and I hope it isn't one-off. I hope there's more of this in the set. Such a cool callback to the morph mechanic from, like, Genesis Cycle. Was that Genesis?
Oh, that's a
Really
great
early
shout.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
I'm
those
a
of you
little.
who don't remember, Changeling was a classic morph card, and allowed you to swap between types in
Oh,
ways that were
Lunar.
really interesting
Oh,
and
wow,
hard
I
to
was way
do.
off.
I'm a little surprised that the design team did not tie it up with threat. I think it's such an interesting mechanic with this modular ice type.
Yeah, it does feel like a natural fit for threat, and maybe we're gonna get some kind of errata for it, so that this like baseball bat functionality becomes threat. Or maybe the playtesters just found that it was like more interesting to just be able to, for the corp to switch back and forth a little bit with a little bit more control than just looking at the agenda points in the game.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen more flexible ice and agendas coming from this set, so I think it's cool to see that HB is going to have a card like that as well.
It is at least costed aggressively, given that it has that ease of switch. Like 6 is a lot.
Yeah, you really do have to you kind of have to get value out of both the sniper rifle and the baseball bat mode to really feel good about including the 6 cost piece of ice. At the same time, you know, they did just lose Fairchild 3, so that slot is open. All right, I think maybe we'll move on to the final card that you guys spoiled. This is Greasing the Palm. It is a 3-cost operation transaction. It is 3 influence, and its text is, am I still blocked by the... Excuse me. Blah, blah, blah. Am I still blocked by the Diaper Guru? Yes, but my people and his people are negotiating an amnesty agreement as we speak.
It's almost got like the reverse of the feel from Scorched Earth. Like you're being public about something that actually is going wrong, but behind the scenes something is clearly like shady happening. As opposed to like Scorched Earth, where it's kind of just all misdirection. So I think that is an interesting twist on that general trope.
Yeah, this almost feels like it's trying to set up a future mechanic of like a new alternate win condition for the corpse, where they can reach an agreement with the runner, maybe hire them on as a sysop or something. So I'll be interested to see if we see more of this kind of stuff in future cycles. That would be an interesting way to do commentary on the state of the game.
It's a good point.
Mhm.
The fact that this is a
Indeed.
transaction is very interesting too. Like, do you potentially splash this in Wayland?
Oh, for that building a better world synergy?
Yeah.
I feel like the last people who would, want to draw a truce or kind of work together with you, but maybe if the runner's playing peace in our time, you can kind of like find some common ground.
I have to agree with what Core has said in the chat, which is that the amnesty win con is a lie. I think especially in Wayland that is true, as they are probably, as you said, the last ones to want to grant that sort of clemency.
One of the nice things about this card, though, is you don't necessarily need the amnesty win condition. Like, it has solid value even without that. Just the negotiation is strong by itself.
Yeah, and Wayland is a good faction for leveraging negotiation. Like they often do it with with guys with bats or something like that. But negotiation can take a lot of different forms, and so it's interesting to see HB kind of give it a shot, and greasing the palms with what might be literal greased palms in their cybernetic hands. So.
Mm-hmm.
Any other final thoughts on the set of 4 spoiled cards?
But we did release a few alt arts of these. Maybe we should talk about those.
Oh, you know what? That seems like a great idea. Let's go to the very first one that you guys sent me. I thought it was really cool to see an alt art so soon on cards that aren't released yet. So this is Wage Workers. This is a 2-cost asset, Biroid, clone, and industrial subtype. It says, whenever you finish taking an action, if you have taken that action exactly 3 times this turn, gain a click. And it is 2 influence and 4 to trash.
This
So-
card
And the
is
flavor
sick.
text. The flavor text too. I love that. We had Zoe on and talked with Zoe, and Zoe actually wrote this flavor text. Free as in markets, cheap as in beer. It's so good.
Yeah, I won't take away too much from like the flavor implement. I can't speak today. Wow. I won't take too much away from the flavor implications of this card. I think it's fantastic. I think that if you want some more insight on that, you should listen to the episode. Always be shilling. But like just rules wise, this card's a banger, and it is Jeeves, but it's also not Jeeves in a lot of interesting ways.
Yeah. I think extremely importantly, a way that it isn't Jeeves is playing one mutually assured destruction doesn't trigger it immediately. Like it looks for you having taken the action 3 times rather than having spent 3 clicks. So like you could, in theory, get an extra click after playing mutually assured destruction with this, but you're gonna have to work to get there.
I think one thing that was really cool that Dyer pointed out in the Stim Slack chat is that this can actually trigger multiple times in a turn. Now, that's going to be some weird combo wombo, but
I'm so glad you're bringing this up, Orbital, because I have the combo wombo for you.
Oh, do tell.
Is it operations plus advancements?
I mean, imagine having a hand made of 3 biotic labors, 1 luminal transubstantiation, another 2/3, it doesn't even matter which one, and then 1 installable card. And your turn can proceed as follow. If you have 20 credits and wage workers installed, you can res it. You can play biotic labor.
Wait, hold on. I just want to say, I love that the sentence starts with, imagine you have 20 credits and a wage worker's installed.
Whoa, hey.
It's easier to do than having big deal and enough credits to use it. Okay?
That's right. Yes, a person can dream, right? If you end up with that situation, you just have to know what you need to do.
Yeah, this very
So
common combo line.
Yeah, I know. Just have it. So make a note of this.
Jeff, I will say though, like, hey, look, again, another eternal bone here. That's pretty possible in CI. Like that's pretty possible.
Wait,
fair point.
On.
Let's let Seba actually go and get this combo out though.
Yeah, I have a point after it though. A horrible realization I just came to.
Okay, I hope it doesn't break the combo because I would be very sad about it.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Okay, here it is. It's your turn is going to proceed as follow. Click 1, biotic labor. Click 2, biotic labor. Click 3, biotic labor. You guessed it. At this point, you have 7 clicks. 6 from the biotic labors, 1 from the wage workers. Wonderful. With 7 clicks, you can install, advance, a 3/2, and score it. And because you advance it 3 times, wage workers gives you another click. So there you are now at 4 clicks once again. And then you go ahead and install, advance, a luminal. At this stage, you don't get the click, unfortunately, for advancing 3 more times, which is sad. But you get 3 clicks back from luminal. And you can spend your first click to install a card. And there you go. Now you installed 3 cards, your first 3/2, the luminal, and this card. And now your turn actually begins. You have 3 clicks. You have 4 more points in your agenda for area. And you have 1 extra card installed. All at the modicum price of 20 credits. There you go.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
Can't wait to play that sports deck.
I mean, actually, now that you
This
say
probably
that,
goes in sports.
yeah, probably that
absolutely.
that combo is actually probably completely reasonable in sports. Now that I think about it, you get to 20 credits and have like 8 cards in hand because the runner stole some agendas last turn, and you can just do some wild stuff. And people are calling out. There's ways to probably keep extending that combo by drawing 3 cards to gain a click, or clicking for 3 credits to gain a click.
Yeah.
So this could go on.
That's a 16-click turn. How can you top that? You just drop your deck and leave the table at that point.
Yeah. I mean, you just
the horrifying. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I guess one way that you could top it in Eternal, and this is the horrifying realization that I came to, which I'm seeing in chat. I'm not the only one who's come to this realization. This doesn't have the same name as Jeeves. You can have both of them.
Oh boy.
Now, Jeeves only will trigger once, right? But still, that's an extra effectively free click that you're getting.
No, I think that is also. I mean, like, I'm going to be honest. It's not the interaction I'm most worried about in Eternal with Jeeves at the moment.
That's fair. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie is calling out yet another card that you can combo with this in Eternal, and if I ever win a World Championship, you'll also be able to combo it with this card, because my World Champ card will just be this card reprinted. So it's probably a good thing I'm in OP and can't play in Worlds anymore. This is plays 3 advancement counters and click, host advancement counter again, click, click. So this would also trigger Wage Workers. So who knows? Maybe I'll get my wish. Because clearly Wage Workers was printed for me specifically. So maybe we'll get Efficiency Committee back as well.
I mean, given how much time we've spent talking about like wild combos, this is genuinely an incredibly powerful combo piece. We've already seen that from Jeeves in the past. And like, this is stronger as a combo piece in a number of key ways. It's obviously, there are some ways that it's weaker, but in some ways it's much stronger than Jeeves.
Yeah, I think I want to very quickly, because there were some questions in the chat, and there's been lots of questions, like, what are the differences between this card and Jeeves? And there's a couple that are, like, all substantial buffs that I think are worth mentioning. So the first thing is, Jeeves, if you were going to install 3 cards, and one of those 3 cards was Jeeves, Jeeves wouldn't trigger, because Jeeves had this weird retrospective look back thing, where he had to see that he had to, like, be there watching you click each time. Whereas Wage Workers, you can install a card. Let's say we're NEH. We install an asset and we draw our Wage Workers. We can then install the Wage Workers, res it, and install a 3rd card and get the Wage Workers click. You have to res the Wage Workers before you take the 3rd instance of the action, but you will be able to trigger it on the turn it's installed, which is a big upgrade. Obviously, we've talked about how Wage Workers is not capped at once per turn, so there's going to be gross plays with luminals or triple events into advancing and scoring. So there's definitely going to be possibilities there. I think a downgrade relative to Jeeves is that with Jeeves, what ended up being really good in like the last year or so of Jeeves's life was that you could purge virus counters and still take an action on your turn.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Wage Workers won't let you do that.
Ooh.
Because you haven't taken that action exactly 3 times. You've taken that action once. So it similarly will not work with doubles and triples. So this won't combo with Mad in the way that Jeeves does in Eternal, which is actually the reason that Jeeves is a super fucked up card in Eternal.
Though again, like you can craft board states where it would trigger off of Mad. Like you play a Subliminal, you play an RLC, you play Mutually Assured Destruction. Congratulations, you have 1 click to try to murder the runner. That kind of thing. Like.
Yeah, I think someone did point out that you can Biotic Labor, Mutually Assured Destruction, and then play End of the Line, and that will trigger Wage Workers, and then you can play the second End of the Line.
Oh no. Well, that's gonna we're gonna see that kill people on stream at some point in the future.
Dan, I want to make sure that we don't just have a bunch of old heads talking over you for this whole time, so I want to make sure you have a chance to get some thoughts in.
Well, I appreciate that. I've been enjoying listening about Jeeves, a card that I've never seen play. But I'm thinking about some of these crazy combos. I was honestly going to say, instead of End of the Line, like, depending on how many tags you get off with Mad, like, what about Mindscaping? Let's bring a new card in here. But I don't actually know how high that scales.
So yeah, Mindscaping scales up to 3 tags.
Okay.
And But of course, I haven't integrated those cards into my workflow yet, so I can't pull it up super quickly. But no, I think Mindscaping is a really good shout, and like Mindscaping is like an efficiency 2 influence card, so I think it's a very reasonable card to think about including in this style of deck.
So
And also, oh, go ahead.
can I cut in with one quick question? I am behind on spoilers. Does Mindscaping remove the tag or no?
It does not. Here, I will pull it up in
that's sick.
just a second.
That's really good. Okay, sorry. Just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah. The text of Mindscaping is resolve one of the following: gain 4 credits and draw 2 cards, and add a card from HQ to the top of R&D, or do X net damage. X is equal to the number of tags the owner has, up to 3. So you could potentially play 3 Mindscapings for cheaper than End of the Line, and the first one you could use as like a draw card before you try and set up your combo. So this is like part of why I think Mindscaping is secretly very cracked, because it can fit in a combo deck and also be like an efficiency piece at the same time. And both modes will combo with Wage Workers, I think, in really powerful ways.
I think somebody's going to do something disgusting with Mindscaping, but we don't have to go off on that tangent.
Yes. Yeah. And Seba, I want to make sure you also have, I appreciate the combo, but I'd love to hear what other thoughts you have about Wage Workers.
I think it's a great card. I had the pleasure to play a little bit with Jeeves, and it was great. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how people manage to bend and break this and come up with some crazy combos. I'm really looking forward to that. But I think even as just an efficiency card, in IDs like Isa or Asa, I think this is it's a pretty great card. Being able to score a 4-2, never advance in it, or a 5-3 with a seamless seems pretty good.
Yeah, it's funny. I've being in playtesting, I've known about this card for quite a bit, and I'm super excited about it. And then like right at the end, we did some extra testing games, and I was like, man, I'm really excited for what's sort of a glorified pad campaign. Because there was a lot of turns where you just go, do the same thing 3 times, click for a credit, because I really need a credit right now. But the fact that this card can be so flexible, and like it can just be a pad campaign, but also can let you, break one of the fundamental rules of the game, which is that you can score a 4-2 unadvanced off the board. Like, it's just cool that this card can flex in so many different ways. And like, I'm personally super glad to see the Jeeves style effect back in the game with a slightly different coat of paint. Hopefully some more understandable rules interactions. And
also harder to splash, right? You don't suddenly get your 23 influence NEH decks with this.
Yeah, that's true. You actually, if you're going to spend influence on this, you spend influence on this and not the Marylands you also wanted to run and get it for free.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've talked about this card for quite a bit now. So let's move on to the next HB card, which, I would almost say the drill text was pretty close to the real text. But I do think this card's super interesting, and I also want to make sure we give Kat Shen a shout out. This is another phenomenal piece of art, and it looks fantastic in the frame. So I'm thrilled at how good it looks. But this is Jaguarundi, 4 cost, 3 to res, Sentry, AP. It says threat 4. When the runner encounters this ice, give them 1 tag unless they spend a click. And then it has 2 subroutines. Give the runner 1 tag. If the runner is tagged, do 1 core damage.
I think this card is so cool for a couple of reasons. We got some, HB tag cards in the last set, but it never really felt like you could commit a whole game plan to them, or you could, but it didn't always feel great. So I think that we're getting a little more tag support. Actually makes this look wide open in a piece of ice that I feel like is very usable. And the fact that it like is tag support and uses the threat mechanic to also tax clicks and core damage, it's like all the things that we want HB to be doing in some of the newer sets. So I think that already makes it a contender.
I think it's really great how NSG has been designing cards that like sort of are reminiscent of some other cards that are rotating away, but have been changed to a different faction. I think this kind of reminds me at least a little bit of IP Block, but it's very HB flavored and themed, which is great. Where the sort of conditional tag is depending on the runner deciding to be taxed a click or not, instead of being AI hate, and then of course with the removal of the trace mechanic, but the payoff for the runner being tagged becomes a very sort of HB sort of in-house reward, which is a core damage. It doesn't matter if you get into my server. I don't care about that. I'm just going to get my interlogicals to be a 2/2 and X confirm hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sucks to hit this thing in the early game, because that was always one of the weak parts of, like, HB has a lot of ice that's very punishing to face check if you're at the right phase of the game. Like, Drafter, I think, is the one that really comes to mind. If you accidentally face check a Drafter in mid game, you sometimes need to just scoop. Jaguarundi, but if you hit Drafter early enough, it does nothing. Jaguarundi, even super early, hitting this, not being able to break, taking a tag, and taking a core damage, that can really hurt you for a while. It can really hit your tempo, and just having the core damage from the very beginning of the game when you didn't get a strong effect out of it, like a stim hack, really hurts you.
I agree. The fact that the two subroutines sort of play off of each other makes this a really, really harsh face check. I think I'm even without the threat 4 ability, I think this is an interesting piece of ice that is going to be incredibly good very early on in the first few turns, and then whenever before threat 4 comes alive, and when the runner has down a sentry breaker, I think this is going to be okay, and then it's going to be really harsh again when the unencounter ability turns back on. But I think that's true. I don't mind face checking into a drafter turn 1 or turn 2 when there's literally no cards in archives to recur, and not a lot that I can suffer from the corp installing. But yeah, starting the game with a 4 hand size and playing into HB's win condition, that's rough.
I also want to say, I think it's a great example of what the threat mechanic is doing this set. If this card didn't have the threat mechanic, I don't think I'd play it with the high cost. It wouldn't be a bad early game ice. But once the runner does have a sentry breaker, it's not like it's the highest strength or the most taxing ice in the game. So the fact that they put the threat 4 in there to have it adjust with you as the game goes on, like, feels great. It seems like it's accomplishing exactly what some of their goals for the mechanic were.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's especially with it playing into HBs. I'm going to have a lot of ways to incidentally tax your clicks, and eventually you're going to end up at a point where you don't have enough clicks to do something important type. Just that's kind of a core thing that they're able to do with a lot of their effects, and throwing that onto another ice like this in the late game, just, I don't know, like it might not win the game outright by itself, but it might squeeze you down to, well, I had a 30% chance to win on the last turn, now I only have a 25% chance to win. That kind of thing.
I think one question I want to ask before we move on to the next card, do you think this can see play out of faction?
If CTM were still around, I think you would definitely splash one of these, especially if you were, I guess Jeeves isn't in the card pool, so, but like, back in the day, you used to have like one Architect and some Marylands to splash a Jeeves. I think this could easily slot in a similar place. If there is like a very tag-based asset deck out of NBN, I could absolutely see this, just because being able to give the runner a tag and being able to get kind of an orthogonal threat that is also still very punishing with tags. And then with the threat 4, like, I don't know, this thing seems good if your goal is to get people to trade tempo, getting rid of tags, and trying to avoid tags.
I think Jinteki could potentially slot this. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was suggestion on the Slums cast that it could be played out of Ag Infusion with Cold Side Server when you're already taxing ice, and then you're basically telling the runner you have 1 click to come in, and you are having to take a tag. Good luck.
We didn't even bring up Ag Infusion. I think that's better than what I had in mind. I was just thinking Cold Side Server. Doing that out of Ag Infusion, you're right. Like you get the extra click tax. That could be really good actually.
Yeah, anything that causes click taxing with this is definitely gonna make this card even juicier. My only thing with this is like, and maybe this is a good thing, it's not gonna work in 5/3 suites. You are definitely gonna want it in something that is planning on running a lot of 3/1s and 3/2s, like just because the math with the 5/3s does not work out. So you're not going to see this everywhere.
Yeah, as you're saying it, I also see Crore in the chat like saying threat 4 instead of threat 3 is nice for limiting its agenda builds out of like the 6 agenda only builds out of Reality Plus, which like anytime I see an ice that gives a tag in ways that are not that like the runner has very limited ways to interact with, my mind's immediately going to R plus these days because gaining credits or drawing cards on both turns is starting to look like a real possibility for R plus. So and especially when we think about like the premier kill card being something like End of the Line, like getting the runner's hand size down can actually be kind of relevant for setting up kind of a coup de grace with the End of the Line here. And so Jaguarundi might be a way to kind of do the 1-2 that we haven't seen a bunch in current standard because boom is just the one and the 2 in a single card. So
yeah, it seems to me that getting an actual End of the Line kill with Jaguarundi is going to be a little tricky unless you're also getting other sources of core damage, which is like it seems like it would be easier to do in something like a Thule. Just like because it's going to be punishing to splash both this and Hypoxia or something like that. Whereas if you're in HB, you can just naturally get both of those. But like it is certainly not out of the realm of possibility that you're going to do some incidental core damage and then be able to fire off End of the Line. But you do have to get 2 of them is the tricky thing.
I think if I may, just one last comment. Someone was mentioning Thule in the chat. I think this card and Mr. Hendrick is extremely scary, where you're already wanting to run with 1 click left, so you can tank Mr. Hendrick without taking the core damage. This sort of puts you in a situation where you have to either take a tag or lose your remaining click, which means you likely would have to run even earlier. I think that's a pretty nasty interaction where Mr. Hendrick, Jaguarundi, and Hypoxia potentially are a guaranteed core damage. Then there's no way around it.
Oh, that's pretty gross. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good shout. We have been going for over an hour now, and I want to be respectful for everyone's time here. So I'm going to keep us moving on to the next piece of ice. This is MIC. This is a 6 cost 4-res code gate, and its text is trash, end the run unless the runner spends a click. Use this ability only during a run on this server. It has 3 subroutines. The runner loses a click, the runner loses click, and end the run. And it's 2 influence. So I made a joke earlier about HB having a Fairchild 3 slot open. And to be honest,
it might not be a joke.
Yeah.
It's oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I like though how I think it's a little less rough when you face check into this compared to Fairchild, where your best case scenario face checking into Fairchild 3 was to lose your entire turn so you wouldn't lose your cards and take potentially a core damage. With this one is okay. The core pays 6, and I lose my entire turn. That sucks. But I think it sucks a little less. So in a way, I think Jaguarundi is a really, really bad face check. This one is rough, but I don't think it's quite as bad as Fairchild.
Yeah, I think the chat calling out "this is big enigma" is kind of true.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's one of the things I think we found is that just making numbers go up on ice usually doesn't make them more playable. So I think giving this extra modal effect is potentially a way to justify the higher cost.
I feel like, they learned their lesson with border control. And so they figure that maybe we should try and increase this cost a little bit, but I think it does hamper it a lot. It's going to really hurt to trash a 6 cost ice. Like that's like a pretty serious investment, especially if the runner is only spending a click. So I feel like the situations where you feel comfortable doing that are going to be pretty particular. Now, if they're about to walk into a Hendrick and an Agenda in Thule and take 2 core damage, like, maybe that's what you want. But I think it's definitely not going to be nearly as flexible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's tough. Like, I don't know if I'd say, well, it's a lot tougher to walk the runner into situations where this is border control, but the sheer fact that it can be border control is very strong. Like, very few ice can be border control, even situationally. So the fact that it can ever be that is worth noting. Like, this is a card you're always going to have to at least keep in mind if you're running against PD, for instance.
Yeah, I think precision design
that's...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I think precision design is like a great shout because I think Managarm Skunkworks just seems like the obvious in-faction combo if we just want to play like a generic good stuff deck. Like these two cards work so well together where the runner kind of has to run super early in the turn and then have a lot of money, and they also have to they do have to break a 4 strength code gate, which is not trivial for any icebreaker in the meta right now. So like while it's expensive, and it's not like the most taxing possible ice, it has, I think, to me, like a decent amount of modes in a mid-range deck. The question is, can you afford to run a 6 cost ice that's worse than Fairchild 3 in a sort of mid-range deck?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think in many ways this competes with something like an on-sell. For like this is your top of the, like, this is your top end ice. And yeah, like, there are going to be some situations where the trade-off is justified. There are going to be some situations where it's not. I think you're going to have to really play your games to lean into this if you're running it.
I feel like also another. Oh, sorry, Dan.
No, I'll make a quick comment. Is that if only there was like a new HB card that lowered the res cost of ice. So that could be something to think about. But that's just my only comment.
Dan, you're making me go and find these cards that I can't pull with my program yet.
I know. I can't even remember the name of it, to be fair.
Let me say this. I don't know if the res reducer is worth the slot. I get what you're saying about that, but like, I also don't think that this card needs it. Like, I don't think that you run 3 of these, like, in most cases, because like trashing an ice for 6 that you res for 6 is a lot. Like, it's a lot. But like you guys are saying, like, situationally border control is still border control. Like, that's a really good card that has defined the competitive meta for literal years, like half a decade. So I don't know, like, getting like another version of that seems pretty freaking good. So I don't know.
Yeah, so this is Vovo Izzetti, for those of you who missed this the other day, which is the res cost of each piece of ice breaking the server is lowered by 2 credits, and it can move around between servers. So maybe this can take the sting off of resing a Mick a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. I think this is this ice sits, I suspect, in a decent spot. But I think we'll have to kind of wait and see exactly where it sits in the meta. But like, if it is trying to ape border control, it's trying to ape, as you said, Pants, one of the most meta-defining cards since its release. Since 2018. So, but I think we should talk about maybe the final card. Oops, just trying to set things up and struggling here. the final card that you guys got spoiled, or I should say the final alternate art for a card that you guys got spoiled. This is Greasing the Palm. This is a 3-cost operation transaction. It says, gain 5 credits. You may install 1 card from HQ. You may remove 1 tag to place 1 advancement counter on that card. This is 3 influence.
Ooh.
This card's good.
Yeah. I think if
Card's good,
HP was looking for ways to capitalize on giving tags with Jaguarundi and the like, this is it. This is such a good card.
Or like I think it's good enough that it would see play even without the tag mode. Well, rather, I guess that's probably an untrue statement, but rather it's good enough that you can play it even if you don't get the tag value, if you're getting WageWorks combo value, for instance. But if you do get the tag value, oh my god, this card's good.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. Is like it's a wage workers combo piece that you put in with your red levels and your subliminals, and then if you happen to get that Jaguar tag, we'll say, yeah, like it becomes a negative credit biotic. Like that's incredible.
Yeah, so I've pulled up Lateral Growth, the kind of obvious comparison card, which is just Operation Install a Card, gain 2 credits, or net out 2 credits. Like, that card saw play. Like, that's, Eric is memeing in chat. Were y'all playing Lateral Growth before this? It's like, yeah, Sports Metal decks. I believe even one of Eric's most famous decks was playing Lateral Growth. Because of how it combo with stuff like Jeeves. So
if you want to,
yeah, I think Greasing the Palm will probably have at least some role in certain decks, regardless of the tag mode.
if you want a real deep cut from an old head, there was this deck back in the day that was one of the decks that abused Jeeves really well. It was called Sleeper Hold.
Oh lord.
And versions of that and various other Jeeves decks used Lateral Growth. So it's not unheard of to have Lateral Growth in a deck. And I get what Eric is saying, like, yeah, saw no play, but like it does have a conditional on here where there may be ice or other things that you want to put in your deck that make the conditional here pretty good. Also, if my man is on Tag Me, like he says he wants to be after this set drops, just play this card if you think you're going to face Eric at all, because then that'll ruse him if he loses to it.
I don't know. Like I personally saw at least one person in GLC earlier today saying that when the full set's printed, Tag Me is going to be completely unviable and no one should play it.
Wasn't that person Eric?
It was Eric.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry for stepping on your punchline. This is why I should have turned cameras on so I could see you were building for it.
No, you're good. Like I mean, and that's another thing with this is, I think you probably, unless you have an extremely linear game plan that really like you're just wage workering out 7 points in a very small number of turns or something like that, you probably don't play this unless you at least have a reasonable hope of getting the tag value. But if the runner just gives you the tag value, then you're just laughing all the way to the bank, I think.
Yeah, I do think this is maybe like the other play. I'm immediately gonna say this is. I see a tag, I immediately think yellow, and like maybe fast advanced yellow decks that are like kind of asset spammy could look at this card as well, because it helps them make tempo while jamming, and then when the runner decides to go Tag Me, this is a nice little finisher. It seems like it'd have some legs there.
I think also this card, and it's fun that we've seen this card and Solidarity Badge the same day, because in a world where Anarch wants to keep tag through the corpse turn, and they have a Solidarity badge installed, I like the idea of just going, okay, well, you were going to remove your tag next turn. Don't worry about it. I got you. I'll take care of you. I think playing this card is a pretty good flex against Anarch if the theme of sort of keeping tags as like sticks around.
I think the one argument you could make for this card not seeing play, I think goes to rotation. Or rotation not being fast enough, rather. So there are a bunch of high-powered cards in sports, like where you're kind of like slots limited, right? And I could easily see this without a way to like really do tags in a consistent way, being like your 50th card, right, in sports. So I get that angle on it, right? But we do have to keep in mind that a lot of the powered cards that we're talking about, maybe they're not going in this rotation, although a lot of high-powered cards are. The next rotation, Red Sands, and then the rotation after that, Kitara. I think it's Kitara after Red Sands, right? Yeah.
That was the cycle order, yeah.
Yeah, like you're going to be losing a lot of really, really high power FFG operations when those rotate. So, like, I think that this card will see play now in this era, but even if it doesn't, I see a world where it's like a set away, maybe, where it sees a decent amount of play.
And it's I get the slots argument. I think I buy the slots argument, but like it's not like it doesn't work with RLC. Like RLC installs the wage workers, this installs the agenda, bingo bango. Like you're already halfway there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ooh, Oppo Asa. That's that's a good one there, Eric. I'll keep that in mind. I won't be able to make it good, but I could probably make it okay.
And Dan, I want to make sure you get a chance to chime in on this card as well. What are your thoughts looking at this?
Well, I kind of agree that this is not going to replace RLC in a sports deck, but it will feel nice. I mean, like it might, when I think about whether or not I want to put a Bass in the deck or not, like maybe instead I'll think about this, just letting you fast advance out 3/2s, even if you're not putting an additional advancement on there, like, or not quite. But like if you can put the additional advancement, like that rocks. And if not, like you've got other tricks with some other cards. I think it's going to see some play. But you're right, it might not be busted yet.
Cool. I think that's a good analysis. I also will say, Eric will. It's in Eric's interest as a Tag Me player to shit on every anti-Tag Me card. So take his analysis with a grain of salt. But also, Eric is often an honest guy. So I'll leave it up to the viewers to decide. And yeah, I think that's going to start getting us towards a close. I think I might go and ask the guests of the cards that got spoiled today, which they're most excited to slot into a deck when the whole set's out. And Dan, maybe I'll start with you.
Sure thing. I'm really excited for Jaguarundi. I think it'd be fun to build a good like kill deck, in Thule, or try and lean into those tags a bit more than I've dabbled in the past.
Very cool. Neuropanzer, what's the deck you're hoping to, or what's the card you're most hoping to put into your next deck?
As much as I want to say Max at Home, just because nostalgia value, it's got to be wage workers. I mean, that I'm looking forward to being an absolute degenerate combo player with this.
Very cool. Pants, you're up next on the docket. Or not Pants, I'm sorry, Orbital.
Wow, I am supremely offended there, Jeff, that that you were to say that and compare me to that heathen. I'm just kidding. I love you, Pants. So anyway, You know, Pants already said wage workers. I think it's the most powerful card that we got to spoil. But I gotta give it up to the Jaguar. I just think that card is super interesting. It's gonna do super interesting things if it does anything. I could be completely wrong on this, but I really like the design of the card, and I'm excited to kind of see what it does. MIC seems obvious to me too. Like MIC and wage workers seem obvious, but this card seems way more interesting.
Very cool. And Seba, last shot at this question goes to you.
I mean, I really want to try not to be boring. I would have to triple down on wage workers just for that 16 click combo. But I also I'm pretty hyped about Strike Fund, which I think it's going to be low key, almost a must include in a lot of honor decks. So I'm excited about that too, and also to splash around as I was mentioning earlier, maybe Mercury.
I think we just picked wage workers 3 times in a row, which means we get an extra click. I think
That's right. So we pick another one.
I think that means Jeff has to answer.
Oh, so cruel. I mean, look, here's the sad thing is, like, I am an ASA degenerate player. Like, the only thing that's taken me off of ASA has been the lack of Jeebs and the fact that Op got printed. And now that they're both out, I just have to either play only ASA or only Op with wage workers, and I don't know which it's going to be. But that I think wage workers is my favorite of this set. But I am also really looking forward, like Solidarity Badge. I am really pumped about. I love Freedom Anarchs. Like, it's like playing Freedom Anarch versus playing Hoshiko Anarch. Even if they share 70% of the card pool, I just love Freedom so much more. And I hope that Solidarity Badge gives Freedom a little bit of a boost relative to Hoshiko. So yeah, I don't know. There's so many I'm excited about, but it's, at the end of the day, yeah. Wage workers is just it's this card was made for me, hole in the mountainside. But I think on that note, we should start wrapping it up and let people do some final plugs. And so, Seba, I'm actually going to give you the first plug to close us out.
Yeah. Well, my plug is going to be come to US East Coast Nationals this coming weekend. If you're on the fence about it and you're not sure whether you want to come and want to play, please come. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of lovely people. And there's going to be a ton of Netrunner, which is wonderful. And if you are coming, then I'll look forward to seeing you there in just a few days.
And Dan, do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I have something that I really want to plug. The next time we get a circuit opener kit or a GNK, we better have like a full bleed of Jaguarundi in there. That art is so cool. Or like a playmat. That's my pitch. That's my pitch. I hope to see folks at more organized play. I can't make it to US Nats, but maybe I'll see people in Canada. Montreal Nats, anyone?
All right. Next up, we got you know what? I'm gonna guess Neuropanzer and Orbital that I can maybe have you guys share a plug. So.
I think that might be correct.
My own plug.
Jesus. Okay. I guess I'll start then if you have your own after me. I'll go ahead and plug the Slumscast. Obviously, you just saw the cards. If you'd like to hear us discuss them in more depth, more importantly, if you would like to hear the lead designer of Netrunner, Zoe Cohen, go through just in fantastic detail the lore of the set, how that influenced the design of the cards, and vice versa. A lot of detail on just like how they think about threat as a mechanic and how they design some of the cards with it. Fantastic conversation. Please go check that episode out. We also have other episodes. It's not just the scoops on the Slumscast. We recently taught one of my real life friends to play Netrunner who had never like played a card game before. So we've got other stuff you can check out too.
All right, Orbital. Oh yes, of course you have other things to plug. How silly of me to think that you wouldn't. I hand over the floor to the plug meister himself.
Okay, I got a plus one everything that Pants said. Obviously, go check out those episodes. We didn't gate things behind the drills because we want you to listen to the episodes. We just do that because it's funny. But yeah, if you want to check out some interesting conversations, do that. I'm gonna try to get through the rest of this very quickly, but because I got a lot of it. The first shout out that I'd like to give is to the entire Netrunner community. Thank you for being you. It's been a pleasure working for you over the years. I recently had to step down from my organized play manager role and hand that over to Jeff. He's going to take great care of you. And I want to give out a shout out to Jeff as well. He is one of the most thoughtful people I know when it comes to taking care of competitive players. So you're all in really, really good hands. I did want to continue to shout out that I am not stepping away from organized play entirely, and in fact, I'm still running events. So if you can't make it out to East Coast Championship, which you should try to do, or you can't make it out to Cascadia, which you absolutely should try to do as well. That's in Washington, and in August. Then in September, you should try to come visit me in Minnesota for Off the Grid. And it's going to be a good time. It's going to be lower key than other years. Unfortunately, it looks like the turnout's going to be a little bit small. But if you're interested in a nice, cozy event at the original stomping grounds of Netrunner, yes, that is correct. I booked a room at the Game Center. Then come out and see us. Other than that, the reason I stepped down was I now work on a game called Keyforge. So if you're interested, check that out. I guarantee if you checked it out in 2018, it's actually a lot better than you think it is. And I run OP on that now. So that's all I got. I love all of you.
Yeah, I will second. If you can make it out to OTG, I would really recommend it. I'm super bummed that I cannot make it this year, but I'm hoping to make it out next year. And when I got to go back in, I guess it was it 2021 or 2020? Yep. Okay, it was 2021. It was just a blast of a time, and like genuinely one of the most fun Netrunner tournaments I've been to. So I cannot recommend it enough. Josh runs a great event, makes sure everyone's happy, and please, make it out to organized play events. They are so much fun, and I think those TOs, they're doing it for the love of people coming out and having a good time, and so it's a great way for the whole community to come together and do it. I think with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Dan is trying to get me to make this episode even longer than the hour and 30 minutes we've been live for by mentioning that GLC has a scoop. So it looks like it's another puzzle game like there was in GLC last year on the Sahara Sabbat. I'd really encourage people to go and do that rather than me spoiling the card about an hour after the game went live. And we'll talk about it tomorrow. And I will see all of y'all tomorrow for some very shadowy scoops. And up until then, I hope y'all have a good night.